All right, all right. We are going to try to get this live going in just a second. It looks like we're populating on Facebook, and we should be live in just a second. All right, it is good to see you all today, this Friday. Oh boy, we had an awesome couple of sessions this week in supervision. I want to share with you some of the things that we covered. It's always exciting, just kind of going deep into depth about how to teaching, trying to teach and examine how our supervisees are engaging in situations with their clients. And so we talked about this week. I'm so excited, man. It was just loaded. The title for today is self-reliance and the refusal to accept gifts a result of trauma. Have you ever paralleled someone who doesn't accept gifts or who is self-reliant with trauma? I'm not saying that this is always the case, but you would be amazed at how this parallels and ties in. And this is the theme that we talked about throughout the week in supervision. And I want to jump into it today. Let me be conscious of the time. We're going to try to go through this, but there's a lot to cover with this. And I think as you see this broken down, you'll start looking at someone who is self-reliant or who refuses gifts in a different way and see how this ties into approaches that you might use in therapy, how it ties into to how you might, try to share some of these instances or scenarios in your supervision group. But let's go on and get right to it. And in supervision, what I like to do many times is show little clips. And so we started off with a clip, but we also started out with a question, if I could find it. Um, what causes a person to be uncomfortable or refuse to accept gifts from others? Have you ever thought about that? Someone, I don't know if you've ever experienced having someone that's maybe family, loved one, or maybe even someone who is a client and they just have an issue with accepting gifts. And we talked about how there's could be several sides to this. Sometimes you have a codependent who really is reluctant to accept a gift, and then they might also think that something may be required of them in return, or they're just really uneasy about accepting gifts. But then on the flip side, you also have those individuals who just refuse to flat out refuse to accept gifts. They could be on their backs and they're just not going to take anything from anybody. Matter of fact, they may be even insulted if you were to suggest that you wanted to give them a gift, or so and so said that they found out that you this happened to you or whatever, this and that, and they want to help you out. And just the thought of actually accepting money or resources from somebody just makes them, as one of my clients would say, lose their noodle. But yeah, so so we want to get into that. But let's just try with this clip. And what we did, we had a breakout session. We had a breakout session and we asked a number of questions during the breakout session. What I'll do is set it up just for on the Zoom, and then they just break out, and it'll have questions that I'll put in the chat, and I'll text to them so that they can answer these different questions. But I want you to be thinking about this scenario here with this particular person. Um, and if this was your client, what approach would you use to support them? Do you feel that they have healed? What would be maybe a sign that they're not healed? And how would you identify how to engage them relative to the concern that's being approached today? So we're going to see. I think this is a really good one. We got a lot of feedback on this. I'm going to try to share my screen and we're going to try to run through this. And I hope it's everything is showing live and we're where we need to be here. And this is just a clip that's probably about no more than 2 minutes or so. And I'm hoping that this is showing up. And let's go on. Just take a quick listen. What would you do? How would you treat this? What are you seeing in this profile here with this? Let's make this person our potential client. All right.
Um, he, okay, I'll tell you two stories, three stories. My father never gave me anything except the 23 chromosomes, and I'm grateful. They could have been ugly genes, dumb genes,
Yeah.
but he didn't do bad. All right. So that's number one. Then number two, I remember him coming by once to my house. And so I never really knew him. I used to call this other man daddy. And he used to wave back at me. Like, I feel so sorry for her. I can't tell her. I'm not her daddy.
He said
Hey,
you.
Cindy. Hi, daddy. And my siblings used to say, that is not your daddy. That is not your father.
You just keep waving at this man.
Yeah. So the next, which became my defining moment, and I tell this story, I called him and I said, I want to go to university. I graduated at 16 and I wanted to go to university. He said, sure, come to my job, 3 o'clock. I'll give you the money. And I went to his job, 3 o'clock, 3:15, 3:30, 4 o'clock, 4:15, 4:30, 4:45. He never showed up. Then his colleague comes at 5 o'clock. He said, oh, I meant to tell you, your father's not here. I had just enough money that I saved up for weeks to get a bus ticket to go there, knowing that I would have money to get back. I lived 5 miles away from his job, and I had to walk that 5 miles. And I sat down with tears in my eyes. And when I looked up, there was my father driving by in his car. He had lied. So there's rejection, abandonment. And I'm 16 now. I can process all of this. You abandoned me and you're doing it again. You rejected me, you're doing it again. That day, with tears streaming down my
He's
eyes,
right here.
blurred vision of things outside. I had 20/20 vision of things inside. Because that
Oh
day,
Lord Jesus.
That day.
he did not see me, but I saw myself. And so the poor little girl that was waiting for external forces to change my destiny, that poor little girl did not stand up. I left her there. And the woman you see today stood up. And I walked home those 5 miles, never to look back and never, ever to reach outside of myself for what God had placed inside of myself. Yeah.
How was that encounter?
Wow.
Um,
That's very sad. That's very sad. And when she talks about how the experience caused her to react and respond, to never react and respond the same way again because of that experience. And I can't tell you how prominent that is when I'm working with clients, that one experience. And sometimes after an experience like that, we make declarations or vows that because that happened, I will never depend on my dad. I will never, and see, this hits close to home because I just lost my dad about a month ago, and my situation wasn't that bad like that, but I can identify some elements of this. So I have context to uh the impact of these declarations or these vows or these unconscious actions that we often make as a result of rejection and abandonment. Because that person was not there, then what you learn after a piece of or experience of abandonment like that, you may shut down, okay, and learn to be reliant on yourself because that's who you indeed can depend on. But I don't want to jump ahead, but some of the questions that we want to ask is how do we know if the client is healed? Uh, how do we, in a sense, work through this pain? And I want to talk about a little bit too, who was left. If this was my client, in order to know, I've got to touch on who was left. Uh, it's concerning that little girl who was left at that time. At the wherever she was left. She talked about the little girl was left. Who is that little girl that was left? Boy, when you get your client to process that, you're taking them back and you better be ready, right? So we're going to get a little bit deeper into this, but just I want to take just 1 minute to let you know about a opportunity for a free continuing education unit on February the 18th. We are super excited to have LB, who has been awesome to work with, LB Brown, and I'm so excited to have her. She is a great speaker, and she's going to be talking about making sense, understand. Making sense, understanding the importance of financial social work. This is a free event that anyone can come to. You don't have to just be a member of Social Workers of Alabama. So if you know someone that would like to attend, invite them, and we hope to see you. Also, we have Aspire Social Work Supervisor training that is coming up, and I've got a lot of questions about this. This is a great conduit to be able to bring income if you haven't already started doing that independently. It's an easy catch. You can go to Social Workers of Alabama and get clients right off of Social Workers Alabama at no charge to you. And so I would encourage you to look into this. And then lastly, we have the DSM-5 TR training. We're about to upload a new one, but we still have this one, which was excellent. Great reviews on this. So you can do this one on demand. It is required for all LICSWs to take a training, a DSM-5 training, just every 2 years, I think, or so. All right. So let's get on back to our situation. And this was really deep, okay? And so there's some questions that we had to ask, and when we look at this situation of someone being abandoned, want you to think back at what she was saying. But if you were the therapist, how would you know? Um, well, let's just start off with this. If the little girl was left, who was that little girl that was left? Because I know for me, the little boy was left. That wasn't necessarily such a good thing. But with this client, let's just pretend that she's our client. Who was left? It sounds like the person who was left was a person who had optimism, who had hope and confidence and trust. We talk about the trust versus mistrust stages, right? That happens in life. That's way earlier in life, but the trust and mistrust is being established here. We talk about abandonment. How does that play a role and factor here? um, the little girl was left. It seemed like that little girl was open to trusting relationships. If I trust myself and I trust others, that would be like a more secure attachment. But something changed here. She was 16 years old. Sounded like she was an optimist, someone who believed in love and attachment, who had hopes for that, who thought that this was a possibility. Um, she was left behind. And so, is this a good thing that she was left behind? I think from the perspective of the speaker, maybe she's suggesting that this wasn't a healthy me that was present at that time. This part of me searched to maybe find the fullness of, well, security in someone else and not searching enough for myself. But let's just say we have to evaluate a lot of times to see for ourselves if we believe that the client moved in a good direction, that it was good to leave that. Because this is what one of my supervisors was saying. Is that a good thing to actually leave a part of me? You know, that separation many times causes us to build a wall. Okay. That wall causes us many times to not be able to blend in relationships. Let me continue. So, like I said, for myself, when I left that little boy, for me, that wasn't a good thing because that declaration or that vow was that I will never be abandoned again. I will never have someone that I trust in that doesn't show up. I will never be vulnerable. Okay. And sometimes when you're very young, you're not mature enough to make the more godly decision about the situation and and lovingly make that break. Okay. And so that many times can end up being a detrimental thing when we leave that part of us. that really is needed to attach in relationships. How do we know if the client is healed? That's the next question. How do you know if this is your client? How do you know that that client is healed? And we talked about that. We asked this question in supervision. We also asked the question about, and I don't know if you thought about this, what attachment style do you think that this individual would be? And we all came up with avoidant. Okay, that was the consensus: avoidant attachment style. Someone who's avoidant um, doesn't necessarily have a high degree of trust in others per se, but more self-reliance and trust on self. Okay, so how do we process this? Well, how do we know if they're really healed is how they talk about their hurt is one thing. How do they talk about the experience of hurt and pain that they experience? I'll tell you this: if you have a client that says that did not impact me in any way, I never felt anger, I never felt rejection, I never felt it just didn't impact me in any way. That's when we know, when we're asking the question, how do we know if the client is healed? We know that they're not healed. Okay. There should have been some experience. And then that's a lot of times, again, I've mentioned this before. That's again when I might ask a question too. When is the last time that you've cried about anything? Because I want to see how balanced they are with their emotions. Do you even feel anything? Because a lot of times when we are avoidant, we don't feel. That's not good when we want to attach in relationships. Another thing that I would ask is how functional are you in relationships right now? And I can't tell you the majority of the time this thing is still playing out in relationships. Majority of the time, okay, when we talk about why is it that you don't want to accept gifts because you are still to a point of where you develop something in you that said I have to cut off accepting I'm not going to get it from somebody else, so I've got to get it from myself, so I can't trust getting something from you. Okay, there's a pride sometimes that rises up in this thing too when we become avoidant. There's a pride that and it could be a detestable thing that someone would suggest that I should receive something from you because that again is suggesting that I have need. I didn't need him. Oh, I won't get too deep. I didn't need him. Never to return is what she said. And we'll take it that that was a healthy development. But for some people, never to return is never to attach. I gotta go. I gotta go. So these are some of the things that we talked about in this. And then we also real quickly, we went through a few questions and let me see if I can find that. We went through a few questions that because we want to make sure that everybody is grasping the concepts here. And this was a powerful one. I'm not even gonna lie. It was a powerful one, and we got a lot of feedback from the supervisees in all four groups. Okay. Um, so let's see. Let's see here. Um, all right. Hopefully this is showing. Uh, some of the questions that we asked uh, is again based on the woman's childhood experiences and her reaction to her father's abandonment. Which attachment style is she most likely to have developed? And we, of course, we chose the avoidant. She withdraws emotionally and refuses to rely on others. All right. So someone, maybe not this person, but someone like her may have difficulty relying on others, considering I couldn't rely on this person. They disappointed me. I refuse to have that happen again. It's an unconscious thing, actually. I didn't learn about a lot of this stuff until I was well in adulthood, still learning now. How is the woman in the case study most likely to function in adult relationships? And this is where things play out. I didn't mention this enough that it plays out in relationships. If you find that this person has been in several marriages, can't maintain a marriage, can't maintain just a dating relationship, has a lot of conflict in relationship situations, always has to be in control of everything, does not attach well. You don't know what's going on in their life if they ever experience distress or ill circumstances because they always seem to just have it together. They don't take advice very well. Many times that's what happens with avoidance. How is the woman in this case study most likely to function? A, she may struggle with emotional intimacy and prefer independence over vulnerability. B, she will likely form deeply dependent relationships, constantly seeking reassurance. That sounds more like an anxious attachment. This would be A. Of course, as you can see, we focus a lot on attachment in our groups. Okay. And here's another one. Which of the following behaviors might be common for someone with an avoidant attachment style, like the woman in the story? A, struggling to ask for help and believing they can only rely on themselves. B, seeking constant reassurance from romantic partners to avoid. That almost sounds like the other one, but the answer to this one is A. And for some of the groups, we were able to go through some of this, but um, I always have a lot of questions that I add on. Some of this information I would get from ChatGPT. This was some of the breakout questions that we had. I think this is a good time to end, but you know, I think that from here there may be a different perspective that some of us have when we're encountering a client or maybe someone who's a loved one who doesn't seem like that they can receive gifts. Okay. They don't want to receive gifts. They pride not receiving gifts, advice, things like that. A lot of times, if I can't receive gifts and things like this is a sign that maybe I've had some trauma. Maybe I also have a hard time receiving love because a lot of times when we make these decisions, someone's trying to offer you love and you don't even know how to receive it because of your experience in the past where someone failed you and we didn't quite get the healing there. We're going to wrap it up. I hope this has been helpful. We're going to try to do this again next week. We had some new supervisees, and one of my supervisees made me feel so good after the session. Uh, and she made me feel good because I worked really hard on this. And she said, this her first time. She said, "Holy cow, that was an amazing hour." That's how you want your supervision to be. If I can help, let me know. And you need to become, you looking to become a supervisor, come check us out at the supervisor.